Good afternoon. My name is Joey Boomba. I am a student from Miss Hlinka science class. We recently received a couple of student teachers who have opened our eyes to the world of invasive species. We're now here to survey the knowledge of our fellow student body on what they know on invasive species.
Do you happen to know what an invasive species is?
No. No.
No.
No. An invasive species is when a species of animal is taken from one part of the world and brought into another part of the world.
Yeah, it's just a species that goes into another territory and captures it for its own.
An invasive species is a species that comes from another country.
This species of some organism that's not supposed to be there.
Well, an invasive species is a species brought into the environment in which they do not belong, kind of like you. But seriously, invasives are very high economical expense. How much do you believe the expense of invasive species are? A, $100 per year, B, $500 per year, C, $1,000 per year, or D, $200,000 per year?
D, 200,000.
B. C.
C.
B. C.
Sorry, that was somewhat of a tricky question. The actual answer is $38 billion. Now that you understand the invasive species is and how costly they are to this economy, let's take a look on what they actually do. 1, they invade areas. 2, they put threat to native species. 3, some small invasives even clog up boat pipes, and so many more.
Do you happen to know any invasive species in the Champaign-Urbana area?
Japanese beetles.
Actually, no.
The Japanese ladybug.
Do you happen to know how to get rid of invasive species?
Not really.
Take away the food source.
Maybe just take them away from the area.
And what would you do if you no longer wanted your goldfish?
You don't put it in a pond or a lake somewhere because that would be like making it be an invasive species.
Our wildlife is being threatened as we speak by invasive species.
What's that?
An invasive species is a plant, animal, or other organism that has been transported into an ecosystem different than its native habitat.
Wait, how do we get there?
There used to be humans for food, as pets, or even to control other invasive species. They also arrived by accident in the ballast water on ships or in shipping crates.
Okay, so invasive species hurt environments by outcompeting the local wildlife for food, water, space, light, and other important things for life.
That's right, invasive species can also grow and reproduce quickly. They can adapt well to different environments. That's why they spread so fast.
I get it. Invasive species can be found in any habitat, water or land, urban or rural areas. Invasive species are in many places, so there are many resources that need our help.
There are many invasive species in Illinois alone. Here are a few that pose grave threats to our ecosystems. The zebra mussel got into the Great Lakes from European ports. The zebra mussel can attach to boats and boating equipment. They clog water pipes and drive native species to extinction. Killing off the mussels can be done by dewatering, killing them with chemicals, or removing them manually. The Canada thistle is spreading around Illinois. Most states, including Illinois, have this invasive species on their noxious weed list. It is native to Europe and Asia. The Canada thistle was probably introduced into Canada in contaminated seed stock. The sea lamprey is an invasive species that has moved into the Great Lakes. It is a fish that looks like an eel with a circular mouth. It uses that thumb-sized sharp-toothed mouth to attach to other fish who are native to the Great Lakes. Sea lampreys were brought here by the government and are now becoming a threat to the ecosystem. Bradford pear trees are native to Korea and China. They were first introduced to the Western world in 1908. They grow quickly because they are resistant to diseases and insects. The autumn olive is another invasive species. It is native to Asia and arrived in the US in 1830 for ornamental purposes. It overcrowds plants that are indigenous to that area. The autumn olive's rapid growth can be stopped by hand-pulling seedlings, treating and pulling stumps, or using pesticide. The Asian carp came in the 1970s from Asia. It was brought over by catfish farmers. Floods in 1990 spread the fish into the Mississippi River. They compete with native fish for food, harm boaters with their jumps, and destroy food chains by eating too much algae and zooplankton. Electronic barriers, fish poison, and harvesting the Asian carp are ways to try to stop their spreading. The honeysuckle plant is an invasive species that is originally from Asia. It takes all of the native species sunlight. It was brought to the U.S. in the 1800s. It lives all over the world. It can be up to 12 feet tall and kills all originally planted plants. The emerald ash borer is originally from Asia. It was introduced to the United States sometime in the 1990s, arriving accidentally in cargo ships. The emerald ash borer is destroying ash trees. The bugs kill most of the trees that they infest within 1 to 3 years. They have already killed nearly 30 million trees. They have invaded 13 states and southern Canada. Here at the Champaign County Forest Preserve, this is Miss Hlinka's 8th grade science class. With us today is Savannah Hampson.
We have been learning about invasive species with students from the University of Illinois. Could you tell us a bit about Homer Lake and your job here?
Well, Homer Lake is one of 5 forest preserves in our Champaign County Forest Preserve District. It is our 2nd forest preserve, and it has a lot of diversity in species and an excellent history here at the park. Our job here at the Forest Preserves is to do just that, to preserve the natural and native wildlife and habitat. And we do so through different conservation methods and management techniques. And we also do a lot of education programs and outreach to help engage the public and teach them about what we do here at the preserves.
So we know that there are some invasive species here in Champaign-Urbana. Can you tell us about the ones here at the Forest Preserve?
We have several invasive species that we work on removing throughout our district. The 2 that we are going to focus on today are bush honeysuckle and autumn olive, because those are the 2 that are going to be easiest to find today. Others would include the multiflora rose, garlic mustard, the rusty crayfish, and more.
So we were wondering, are there any aquatic invasives here?
Yes, we have at least a couple aquatic invasive species that I know about. One would be the rusty crayfish, which was introduced by fishermen who often use crayfish as bait. And at the end of the day, when they're done fishing, any extra bait would normally be dumped into our waters, and so that's how the rusty crayfish has been able to spread across Illinois. We do ask that fishermen who come to Homer Lake not to dump their bait when they're finished, so that would also include minnows or other types of earthworms or any kind of bait that they're fishing with that might not be a native species. Also, we have a large carp population here at the lake, and I'm not sure how that was introduced to Homer Lake.
Okay, and are there any other invasive species that are threatening to come into Homer Lake?
Well, I suppose there's a threat of the zebra mussel coming in. One way to prevent that is to ask boaters to empty their ballast water before they put their boat onto our lake. So the zebra mussel can be transferred from one waterway to another in ballast water, or the water that a ship or boat will hold inside of it. And so we ask that they not release that ballast water from other locations in our lake.
So, have you been having troubles with invasives? Do they hurt this forest preserve?
Well, we really have the biggest problem with the bush honeysuckle and the autumn olive because they tend to take over our native forests and alter the ecosystem, and they kind of change the habitat.
So now that we know there are invasive species here, how do we stop their spreading?
Well, it takes a lot of work. We do have invasive species work days periodically, and we also have staff who spend time each season removing the invasive species. And that can include both mechanical removal, so removal by hand or by machine, and also occasionally chemical removal, so that would be an application of herbicides.
So thanks for your time.
You're welcome.